Hello and welcome to this episode of Talking to Introverts podcast with myself, Sami Blackford, and my co-host,
Denise Oliver. Good morning, good
hello.
afternoon, good evening.
In this episode, we're going to talk about something that Denise and I found a couple of years ago now. We came across and what's his name? What's the fella's name?
Shazad Shamin.
Shirzad Shamin. That's the one. The fella, his work in what he calls positive intelligence, and it's all around self-sabotage and how we will manifest that for ourselves because we're all different. So Denise, bring us in to the topic.
I can't remember how I found out about this. I have a book. I've always got a book. I think it may have started with that. And going on to his website, highly recommend everyone do this, positiveintelligence.com, where there's an assessment. And on this assessment, you find out what your top saboteurs are. So Shirzad has done a lot of research into this. He has a specific name for the style of research. I can't remember what it is. And basically what he discovered over the years was 10 saboteurs. And there's the leader of the pack, which we all have, and everyone's is the judge. Now, your judge will look different, sound different. Maybe even you have a texture or a smell even reminds you of your judge. And this judge is determined that everything in life is a negative. And the thing about the negative side of this is it's your survival. And that's what this is about. But your survival is can be very destructive. It can stop you from doing all sorts of things. Think imposter syndrome and the stress involved in that, and the self-doubt and the lack of self-worth. And this is all coming from your judge. My judge, when I was writing about it, when we did there's an 8-week free course that you can take, and you and I did it along with 3 other people, and it really helped both of us to understand how other people function, and it helps us both now when we're working together. You know that there's certain stuff I'm never going to do. And I know there's certain stuff you're never going to do. And that's to do with these saboteurs. And we'll get into the other 9 saboteurs as we go along. But it was a very, very enlightening 7-8 weeks of working around what all of these saboteurs, again, sound like, what they look like for us as individuals. And my judge was a really sly, like crept in the shadows type thing. And I actually could liken him to Scar in the Lion King. The voice, that evil side that everyone has. But my judge would come out and just like slink around in the shadows and then just illuminate in some way the negative side of me. I can't remember what you said yours was like. Do you remember?
No, I was just thinking as you were talking there, it's like I can't remember the judge when we were going through the course. Like I remember doing the exercise, but I can't remember how mine presented. I'm much more connected with the other saboteurs that are strong for me, which is interesting. I think, like, obviously the judge hides himself well.
Yeah, totally. And this is one of the things, isn't it, that we can go through life thinking, I don't have that. Actually, everyone does. And it's that whole thing of the judge is designed to hide him or herself so that you are kept, in its mind, you are kept safe, your survival is guaranteed, but you will never fulfill your dreams, your ambitions, your hopes, your plans because of this influence that this thought process is what it is, has over you. Where does it come from? No one knows, but it's there. So you're born with it. You will genetically have had stuff passed on to you from generations gone by. Then there's all the influence once you're born into this world of, friends, family, teachers, oh, you name it, the whole thing, media, social media. There's so much influence out there. And depending on who your main judge saboteur has brought into play, one of the nine or several of the nine other ones will determine how you continue to hide yourself.
Mm. And I think what was interesting when we were doing that course was, like you've said, how it's a safety mechanism. So you might think, if you've got a voice inside your head that's saying, oh, you're no good at this, you'll never achieve this, whatever words or emotions come with that, you think, how is that trying to keep me safe? That's not of benefit to me in any way. But I think finding, like that saying, like, realizing you've got a problem is part of healing the problem. I feel like that's how I felt about that whole, the negative self-talk is keeping you safe. Because when I realized that, I was like, oh, okay, I understand that now. And when that voice in my head is saying whatever it's saying, I can have a talk with it, kind of talk it down off the ledge, as it were.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
yeah, I get what you're saying. And also, we're safe, we're healthy, we can do this. But yeah, it's that keeping you in your comfort zone, no matter how uncomfortable your comfort zone might be.
You're
It's,
used to that, aren't you?
yeah,
It's what you get used to. And this whole thing of feel the fear and do it anyway. If your judge is really strong, you'll never do it.
yeah.
You just won't feel the fear because
Mm,
your biggest fear will be to fail,
yeah.
especially in front of others. So if we liken this to one of the reasons we wanted to talk about this again was that listening to women who come to our networking and what they're saying, and we can, because of what we've done, we can hear their saboteurs stopping them. The thought of even attending networking, there are your saboteurs stopping you from attending, keeping you safe. Stay in your safe place. Don't go into someone else's space. Goodness me, what are you going to find there? Well, actually, you might just find something that helps you move forward, but you
Mm,
have to become aware of not just one voice, but several that are coming together as a. That's where I got Scar from in Lion King, because he got all the hyenas
yeah.
to help him out. And I suddenly saw all of the other saboteurs as this pack of hyenas circling all the time. And if they're circling and you're not going outside of that circle, then you'll never see what's beyond that. And it is scary. It is scary to think of the world as, a lion that might get you, eat you, devour you, stop you from going beyond a certain boundary. And boundaries are important, but when they're self-inflicted and not in a good way, then we have to look at that and do something about it, I believe. I spent
Mm,
years not wanting to look at this stuff, and then just slowly, going on various courses and different courses, started to discover that I was actually braver than I realized. And I just slowly started to recognize what was causing me stress, and then did this course. And this was like, whoa, massive light bulb moment, because Shirzad had done the work and put the words to what was going on. So tell us
yeah.
about you doing your assessment. Was there anything that surprised you about it?
No, we all knew what my top saboteur was going to be, didn't we? Um, I was going to say I'll list all nine. I don't know if I'll remember all nine, but I'll talk about
I've got
my.
them here if you want me to read them out. I have to have them in front of me because I forget a couple of them because I'm not them.
Yeah.
which is we bet you do the same. You won't remember the ones that are very low on your list. So I'll do them in alphabetical order: avoider, controller, hyperachiever, hyper-rational, hyper-vigilant, pleaser, restless, stickler, and victim.
Mm.
Those are the words that Shirzad has given the saboteurs. Now, you can go and do different modalities, and they will talk about something similar, but they will have researched it in a different way, so they'll
Mm.
bring it together in a different way. But this one resonated massively with me, which is
Yeah.
why I continue to use it. I think it's great.
Yeah. And so when I did the assessment and my top saboteur came out as the hyper rational, and over the years I've done these personality assessments, like so many different versions of it. And more often than not, I remember one, I couldn't tell you which assessment it was or whose work it was, but one I came out as the questioner, which to me in my mind very much correlates with the hyper rational. So it's like wants the information, very logical, wants like every, when I say wants the information, wants every tiny little nugget of information possible, please and thank you. And you might think, and again, something that I found interesting was like there's the what we might call the negative side of each of these saboteurs. There's also a positive side. Um, so you might think, you know, thinking about things logically and sorting through information is a positive thing, and it is like that is very useful. I know you call on my my hyper rational from time to time,
Absolutely.
and it when the balance tips that. So I'll give you an example. My partner and I are planning a holiday to Morocco for next spring, and I go into the okay, where do we want to go? Which cities do we want to go to? What trips do we want to do? As you would when you were planning a holiday. But then I have to go into every minute detail about everything and finding somewhere to stay. So we're going to Marrakesh first of all, and I had on my phone internet, I had about 36 tabs open of different places we could stay in Marrakesh.
Of course you did. I was surprised to say 36.
Some of them were on Airbnb, some of them were on booking.com, some of them were somewhere else. And this is where like then like those tabs were open on my phone for months because I get to the point where I've got all the information and I have no idea where to go now. It's like the rabbit in the headlights. It's like I just what do they call it? Analysis paralysis is a real thing.
Yeah.
And that's when the hyper rational tips over into the more negative side. And again, it's that avoidance tactic. It's like, well, we don't have to move anywhere now. We don't have to move forward. We don't have to do anything different because, you know, a foreign country that could be dangerous. Why would we go there?
Yeah.
And although it looks like a logical reason for not making a choice, it all comes back to like the inbuilt safety mechanism of just don't go anywhere. Because I will get to that point where it's like I don't know what to choose, so I won't choose anything. I'll just stay here. So at that
You
point,
stay in your comfort zone, don't you? You
yeah,
stay tucked up in your little rabbit hole with all your information because that's what you love. And then there's so much information that it just stops you from doing
yeah.
anything. And I know
So
when I need some information and I haven't got a clue because my brain doesn't do what yours does, I'm like, I'd really love for you to just take a look at this, but please don't go down the rabbit hole. Because I
I
know
mean, you can tell me not to go down the rabbit hole. It's gonna happen. But so then at that point, I have to hand off to. So in this case of the holiday, I hand off to my partner. It's like, look, I found these places.
yeah.
Choose one and book it because I can't.
Yeah, see, I like my husband likes information. So I ask, and he likes to think he's got control. Yes. But I'm more, I get a feeling for something.
Mm.
So we are the complete opposite. My hyper rational when I do, or even whenever I do it, when I do the assessment, is something like 0.6. Yours is way more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's like 9 point something
Yeah,
out of 10 people.
yeah. So when you get your marks, they're out of 10. And the whole thing about finding out this information is not to beat yourself up with it, but it's to just get a deeper understanding of what prevents you from stepping outside your comfort zone.
Mm.
That's how I use it. Um, but I'm a pleaser, 9.8 on the Richter scale of saboteurs. I'm a pleaser. And pleaser is great in that I am very sensitive, empathetic, all of that. So I go off what my feelings are around things. So when when I'm doing research, it's like, oh, I like the feel of that. I love that one. That's it. I'm done. But my husband, no. I want you to look at these 10 apartments that we could choose from. I'm like, oh no, not that one. Well, why not? I don't like the colour. And it's that's it for me. If my sensory body isn't on board, don't take me there. It's not
Mm.
worth it. I'm not going to enjoy it. And that's part of my husband has to go into all the nitty gritty details of how many sets of sheets will we have? How many towels will we get? I don't care. I'll go out and buy some if I'm not happy. I don't care. This one is in a great location. I can come and go. I know where everything is. There's space for everyone and the dog. Well, why haven't you booked it yet? But you're more like my husband, aren't you? In that those details are really important to you.
Mm.
And doing something like this has really helped me to understand my husband. He's never done this. He's not interested in this sort of thing. Ooh, incoming.
1 minute.
All
There we go.
sorted. Are we back?
Keeping it real. Phone call in the middle of a podcast recording. Anyway, where were
Anyway,
we?
back to saboteurs
And understanding your husband.
and understanding my husband. And so I am much I find I can be around him with much more ease than I used to be able to. Because with me, he's like, why can't you see this is important? And I'd be like him, why can't you see that what I feel is important? But, now it's like, oh, he just has to do what he has to do. And I am much more sensitive to my own needs. I was just going to say one thing about being hyper rational is that that whole thing of hyper rational requiring information, one of the negative sides is it's a way of preventing yourself from going deep with your feelings as well.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm the opposite. We are the total opposite. My feelings are the first thing that
Yeah.
come into
I mean,
play.
like, I always say, like, I have no understanding, let's use that word, of what my body requires. So I will wear woolly jumpers on a hot day. Like, because then it'd be ages before I realize, like, I'm really hot. Why am I wearing a woolly jumper? But by this point, I'm like sweating buckets before I actually come to that realization, because I have this disconnect between what's going on in my brain and what's going on in my body.
It's yeah. Although you're incredibly logical, that the sensory element it doesn't really exist, does it?
No.
But and yet at the same time, I've watched you, and I know that there's quite a high hypervigilance going on as well, because you can't not have a sensory element to you, and so then the hypervigilance can come in because you're on some sort of mild stress alert all the
Mm.
time. So your body's getting stressed when it overheats. If you're in company, you're constantly watching who's coming and going. That has to happen. Whereas with me, as the pleaser and incredibly empathetic, I'm watching other people and I just get a sense of you're not comfortable. you're not okay. You don't like this space. And this is one of the reasons why we work on the enrichment networking, because we understand introverts, and you do thank God, you do the behind the scenes technical stuff. And I'm like, we've got to find nice places to go. It's got to feel right. It's got to feel right. If I don't like the feel of it, I can't do this. Sometimes we both go, that's okay, let's give it a go, because we're neither one of us sure. But at the end of the day, we want a win-win for each of us, because we understand how different each of us, our needs are. How has knowing that you have this hyper rational side to you, how has that helped you in business to understand how you were running a business and what has changed for you?
I think I can catch it more now. Now that I'm aware of it, it becomes easier to spot it when it's happening. So in the past, I would have, so when I started this business a couple of years ago, I needed to create a website. You know, it's a standard business thing that we have. We have a website. So instead of just, going, oh, well, I'll use this website platform and create one on there, I went and looked for every possible place I could create a website. So WordPress, I wouldn't need Shopify because I wasn't selling anything, Squarespace, all the others. Which one am I going to choose? So I had to go, obviously, as Hyper Rational says, go into the pros and cons of everything. Like, I love a pro and con list. I had to go into the pros and cons of every one. And I got to the standard point I get to where I was like, well, now I don't know which one to choose. So my website was on hold for months. And at this point, I'm like, this is getting ridiculous. I need a website. So at that point, I was like, well, just choose one. Like, if it's the wrong decision, the worst thing that'll happen, you'll sign up to a 1-year contract with them, and you can change it in a year. So I did. I went with one website platform. I liked their functionality on their website. Liked the the back end where you create everything, and it was fine. In a year, I changed it. I moved to a different platform. And I think that's the thing. I'm getting more used to how hyperrational presents itself and how I can not work against it, but kind of acknowledge it and then work around it. Because, as I said, there would have been no point in me creating a website on Shopify because I wasn't selling anything. It's a service-based business. So in a way, that analysis was required, just not to the depth that I went to. And that I can, looking back in my previous business, I can see many times when I have gone into that hyper-rational, overthinking, analysis paralysis mode, and that cost me in terms of business growth and meeting goals. Like, it really cost me, and I can see that now, and that now I can look at when I'm working in my business now, and yes, use the logical stuff for the benefits of it, and also quieten the negative sides of it. And I think what it really helps me when I'm working with clients, because being a business coach and being a website designer, things like that, we need to look at the logical stuff. So I love looking at people's analytics and their statistics on their website. That's fun. And then I can look at that and it's like, oh, well, this bit here, what's that? You're laughing at me because you do not like that. But when I look at people's analytics, I can say, oh, well, what's this bit telling us? So, and if we carry on doing X, Y, Z, is this going to change this? And that's how I can support my clients. And the same with like business coaching and branding. Like, I can look at it from that logical point of view, kind of step back, because we're so invested emotionally in our own businesses, it can be hard to take that logical approach. So I can be that for my clients. And I think that's using my powers for good rather than evil.
Well, it's also knowing that you can, because you now know more about yourself, you can also interpret what's going on for someone else, can't you?
Mm,
And you have a very common sense approach. It's very simple. Whereas I do have common sense, don't get me wrong, I do. But for me in business, being a pleaser, and I think there's going to be a lot of people out there who are going to go, oh God, that's me too. And I've come across it a lot with women in the therapy world. I've done it. We give our services away,
yeah.
not help ourselves. It's that empathy for the other person, but it goes into overdrive. And it's like, no, no, it's okay. Have this for free. I don't need the money. Well, of course I do. I can't go to Tesco's and, coach someone on the till and they're going to give me my groceries. That doesn't happen, does it?
Mm,
You've got to have money. And it can be very difficult for a pleaser to actually charge properly the price that needs to be charged because
mm,
they don't have that analytical mind. So they never look at in a year how much money do they require to live off? Like, what's their mortgage? What are all their bills? What does it all come to? Add in the niceties of life, whatever they are for you, and they've no idea. They can't give you a ballpark figure. So they don't know how much they need to minimally earn in a year because if you've got a high pleaser, you will give it away.
mm.
And you won't chase it either. You won't go, you won't look people up, you won't look venues up, you just won't do the maths on it. You'll just turn up, you'll pay the bill, everyone goes away having milked you dry, and you wonder why you feel so exhausted.
Yeah.
And that empathetic nature, once you understand it, and once you go, oh, hang on a minute, I don't need to do that for someone else. I really need to look at me and I need to turn in on myself and I need to work on what that what the negative side of this is for me. And it's
Yeah.
just like once you can name it, it makes so much difference. So I'm just going to say again where people can go to do their own assessment and find out what's going on for them. It's www dot obviously positiveintelligence.com. And the guy who set this up is Shirzad Shameen. Lovely, lovely man. Just really so much respect for him. And there's also a book, Positive
Mm.
Intelligence, well worth getting.
And
Um,
I will put the link to the assessment in the description box. If you do the assessment, you then get his emails come through, however often he writes them. I don't know. And then you will be notified when he has his free 7 or 8 week course coming up. Highly, highly recommend doing it.
yeah,
So I did the 8 week free course. Well, we both did the 8 week free course, and then you went on to do the year long
yeah,
course, whatever that was.
yeah,
Um, but I didn't. I chose not to do that. But I just got so much from the free course. It was unbelievable. A very generous man in how much he puts into the free course. I mean, how many places can you get an 8 week course for free? Um, yeah, highly recommend it. I was going to say though, when you were talking about being a pleaser in business and that such a thing, I wonder if anybody has done the research about different industries and what the dominant saboteurs are. Because I remember in the course you were saying in places like Silicon Valley and the tech companies, you get a lot of the hyper rational because it's all the logic and how things work and all that kind of stuff. And I would imagine that in therapy businesses or the therapy industry, there will be a lot of the pleaser going on. But I wonder if anybody's done the research.
he may well have done.
Mm.
It's just, it takes time to do the analysis. What does he call it? I nearly had it on the tip of my tongue then. Something analysis. It said the numbers are probably all in a computer somewhere, but someone's then got to ask the computer the questions
Mm.
and to get it's numbers can be fiddled with, if you like. You know,
Yeah.
research can show you what you want to see.
Yeah.
Factor analysis, factor
Factor
analysis,
analysis.
that's what it's called. Um, and so,
Mm.
yeah, he knows that there's stuff that he could be running off, but he's a very highly successful business coach.
Mm.
That's his thing. And he started doing this work as a result of his controller going overboard, and eventually his board of people, I don't know what they're called, in a company, not chemical company, what was it? He had another company, basically chucked him out because he
Mm.
was so controlling about everything that the stress that was being generated within himself was being projected at other people, but also he was creating stress within the company as a result of that. So his board of governors just had this meeting and just ousted him. And basically, he was like, I went into a decline. What came out of that is positive intelligence.
Mm.
But it made me, this massive negative in my life, in my world, made me stop and look at the meaning behind it all. And that's where, how he did the research, I don't know, but he's got one of those brains that likes research.
Mm.
He's also a high pleaser as well. So it's an interesting combination of things that he's got going on for him.
And that's another thing that I thought was quite interesting. It's like your how your saboteurs present themselves can be such a mix of some that don't necessarily look like they go together. Like I'm trying to think of an example, but like say maybe pleaser and victim would go together. You can understand that going together, but like it could be any combination. And I was just thinking actually. So I was talking about this to my partner when we would do, I think it was just after we'd done the course. I was talking to him about it. He's like, oh, that sounds interesting, send me the link. So I sent it to him, and he had like four that were 10 out of 10. I'm like, wow. um and he one of his top ones was pleaser. I think hypervigilant was also up there. um and going, back to what I was saying about different industries and what would be high in those industries, he's in software development, so that like completely goes against what I was saying. But yeah, and I've really had to uh let's say develop kindness around how his pleaser presents itself, because he will do everything for everyone, and it really annoys me because I can see the effect it has on him. So, example, he's started a new job in the last couple of months. So he's contracting for this big business, and he's working with their IT department. And from what I understand, when he went into that business, like he's worked with them in his old job, they were a client of his. When he went in the last couple of months in a different role and could see more of what was going on the inside, like from what I understand, it's a bit of a shit show. So he's in there. He went in one particular role, quite a step back kind of role, and he has, because of the knowledge he's got, he's built software for them in the past because they were his clients. So he's got knowledge of the software, and like he's been in this industry 20 odd years. Like he knows what he's talking about. So he's kind of worked his way into being like a project manager type thing in this thing. And just the other day, something in the business was about to expire, some sort of piece of software or something, and he realized like the day before, and just literally put that fire out within a day. And he's like, did anybody thank me? No. I'm like, yeah, they're not going to. I
No.
mean, this is and this really kind of brought it home to me. It's like, oh, this is the pleaser. They will go out of their way to do everything to save people from, you know,
Yeah.
business burn down, whatever it is. And when they don't get a thank you, it's like,
The martyr mileage really comes out.
oh,
Yeah.
I like that martyr mileage. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can totally identify with that. The victim grows with the pleaser. I'm pretty sure he'll have a high, if he's a pleaser, he'll have quite a high victim as well. And again, it's just that knowing that because using that word victim, I just want to, because I've got a list here, I just want to read out. When Shirzad does or used to do his like group workshops in companies, he would do them in alphabetical order because no one wants to have a high victim. No one
Mm.
wants to know that that's what's going on for them. There are some of the words he uses that people like the sound of more than others. So often one of the things that someone wants to be is a stickler because you're good with detail and you want to cross every T and dot every I. And isn't that good in a company? Until you go over the top and you're constantly tweaking the same thing. So no one wants to be a victim. But if you go on to the do the assessment, actually what a victim is, and it's very similar to a pleaser, is sensitive, highly, highly sensitive to what's going on, and highly sensitive to, like Rich has done, oh my God, if this expires now, this affects so many people. I can fix it. I'll do that. I'll sort it. But they put so much time and effort into sorting someone and pleasing everyone else but themselves that then the victim comes up and goes, well, no one gives a shit. Why did I
Mm.
do that? Why did I bother? Wasted my time. But it's just a highly sensitive nature that does that, that sees it in the first place when no one else is even looking for it. It hits them in the face. It's like, oh God, that needs sorting. I'll just get on and do it because I can.
Mm.
But then I'll play the martyr mileage for a long time after that. Um, and it's also that it's one of those things that the victim, in the positive sense, really gets the sort of the nuances within other people and really enjoys bringing those out. So if you think about attaching that to an outcome, they will put a lot of time and effort into that outcome, but never understand why people aren't going to turn around to them because we're not the same and go, God, you're great at this. Thanks for doing that. No, people just crack on, don't they? And so you have to, this is where, if you have high pleaser, high victim, I do, um, along with avoider and restless. I mean, what a top four to have, bloody hell. Um, you have to just have these really empathetic chats with yourself because no
Mm.
one else is going to do it unless you go to therapy or modalities where you will get listened to and understood as to what is going on for you and given positive tools to take away to help you recognize what's going on for you. And it comes out, as I said in earlier, it comes out of what you're born with and then the lifestyle you live after that.
Mm.
But having someone like yourself who doesn't do the emotional stuff, like, no, thank you, stepping away from that, is actually really useful as far as I'm concerned because you see things that are happening outside of me that I'm taking on board as though they're mine. And you go,
Mm.
hang on a minute, is that your pleaser coming up right now? Why aren't you stepping in here and saying something? It's like, oh, and I have swore at you in the past. I think there was certain terms told you to F off, bringing that up and all of that sort of schmozzle. But then vice versa, I can also say to you, hang on a minute, I can see that your body is stressed.
Mm.
You are being hyper vigilant alongside your hyper rational here. And I can just tell when your body's out of kilter. It's just not okay. You're not, You can't sit still. You're constantly twitchy. And often, especially in networking situations, that's when you go really quiet. And it's like there's something you're not expressing.
Mm.
You're trying to keep it battened down because that's the rational thing to do. You don't express yourself. No, 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 that's not going to happen. And so I just think I'm so grateful that Shirzad brought all this together in the first place. I'm
Mm.
really grateful that we did this together. It's really good. There's also we're talking about the judge and the saboteurs, but there's also a flip side to this. This is what Shirzad teaches us, how to access what he calls the sage brain, the wise area, the wiseness within each of us that goes, oh, hang on a minute. If I take a step back here, what is the bigger picture? What is really going to happen to me if I decide talk about it from my point of view, if I decide to step out of the ring of hyenas that are circling me and just go and take a look at the horizon beyond them, what actually happens? Not a lot. Is what I've discovered, and this is what I say would say to anyone who wants to know is give it a go. A bit like you and the websites. Actually, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Mm.
I've got a contract for a year, but I learn a lot about this platform and I know what I like and I know what I don't like. Okay, when it comes to renewing the contract, I'm not going with them. I'm going to play with someone else. And it's that. But before that, you would have beaten yourself up about the choice you made. And oh my God, it's not got everything. I didn't do enough research. I should have done more. And you go down that rabbit hole of berating yourself for
Mm.
not having done X, Y, Z, A, B, C in that order. You did it A, B, C, X, Y, Z instead, and it didn't work out. So for me, knowing and consulting in my sage brain when the pleaser comes up or the avoider comes up or the victim comes up, it's just like, okay, what is really going on here? Okay. And I say hello to it. I don't ignore it. It's like, hi, you're back. I see you. I know what you're trying to do here. I know that you consider that you're helpful and that survival is the name of the game. But actually, I want to go beyond this. And I know that there's a world in which I can thrive. But I'm glad that you're there for me, that you're on my side. And I'm willing to listen to you. But then I have to go beyond that. And that's how I've used it ever since we did it. And I go back to it time and time again. You can use it
Mm.
in every aspect of your life: work, relationships, money, health, well-being, things like that. So it was very hard for me as a pleaser to state my health needs, my well-being needs around other people. I was in a conversation only a few weeks back with a friend who we were talking about the menopause, and mine was very early. And I said, I just had to wait for friends to catch up. Some friends have never come back into my life after my saying, I can't drink alcohol anymore. It's not okay for me. No, I don't want to go to an Italian restaurant and eat plates of pasta. It's not okay for me. And I now hear those friends going, oh my God, I can't eat this. I can't drink that. This doesn't work for me. And it's like, yeah, I know. Because I knew this way before you did. But you didn't like the fact that I chose to please myself. And I got things like, what do you mean you're not going to have a glass of wine? God, you're so boring.
Mm.
And I remember thinking how hard it was for me to go, yeah, I might be in your eyes, but I know my body and I can't please you. I've got to please myself here. And I think for a long time I avoided actually, yeah, I'm very introverted anyway, so going out isn't an issue. But I avoided meeting up with people because it's like, I just don't want to go there with you and have these arguments and please you by having, let's say, a croissant, which is like a killer in my digestive system. It's just like, oof, don't go there. Um, and then, yeah, just dealing with the whole fallout of it all and really changing my diet massively. in order to have a health and well-being that has kept me alive on the planet.
Mm.
You know, it's a bigger picture thing. Like my pleaser could have come in and go on, you know, help, you know, just help that person out. They've gone to all this trouble. They've invited you to this, that, and the other. Look at what a wonderfully laid table there is. Just eat everything. And I can't. It's not okay for me. Whereas someone, and I think it shows up energetically, and people sort of without even knowing get it. They're like, oh no, I know I can manipulate this person over here because they're a pleaser. And it's just like, right, now I know when I'm being manipulated. And it's like, no, it's not okay. Whereas if someone offered you wine and you were like, no, I don't drink wine, that's it. You just stop at that. No, no,
Mm.
no, thanks. I don't want that. Whereas I used to reason and justify everything. Oh, and then this almost lecture, long lecture as to why I couldn't. No one was listening. Nobody cared. Boring the pants off everyone, you know. And it's just like now I have this information around, and I'm pointing to my pieces of paper in front of me here, around what happens with the saboteurs and the different areas of the brain that they are generated from, which ties in with wonderfully with the havening techniques.
Mm.
And you know, I can use both now when I'm working with clients. So such useful information. People who research and put this stuff together don't just do the research and stay down the hole.
Mm.
They're very clever at putting it all together and then telling us how we can use it for our, to the best of our ability, for, you know, to our personal advantage and for the benefit of the planet, the world, people on the planet.
Mm.
I'm always surprised when no one else is doing what I'm doing, what you're doing, you know, when no one else is looking into this stuff.
Mm.
But we all have different strengths, we all have different values. And this is just one thing that we can look into. As you know, you've mentioned being the questioner. I
Mm.
can't remember, and I'm sure I've done a similar assessment that you're talking about. That wasn't a questioner. I can't remember what I came, the helper I might have been, something like that. And there's just so many more that you can do, so many ways that psychology in particular is coming up with these different testings and then putting out these hypotheses on how we can live our lives differently. So yeah, when you're listening to this, if you're listening to this and you hear us talking about this, you'll be like, oh, I'm sure I've read that by someone else. And you
Yeah.
will, because it's not just one person researching this. There's lots of people researching this stuff and coming up with different ways of explaining it. And this is just one way.
Mm. I have to say this one, like Shirzad Shamin's positive intelligence, is the one that has resonated most with me. Because as I said, I've done so many of these personality assessment things, and you get your answers, and you're like, oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
But this one, and it was probably through the free course that we did, I really got a sense of like how these things affect me and how then I can work with them rather than have them as they're always in their negative effects.
I think for a lot of these assessments, it's that you get the information, but you don't know what to do with the information.
Yeah.
And that's what you can do. You can go on to positive intelligence, you can get the information, but then what? What do you do? So the 8 week, I'm saying it's 8 weeks. I think being me, I set up calls before and after for everyone so that we could introduce ourselves, blah, blah, blah. And I know, and what I learned from it was that I have a high avoider. So if I don't sort stuff out and show up as the leader, the person organising it, I won't show up.
Yeah.
Avoiders
Yeah.
do that.
And it's interesting, two of the other people in our group were high avoiders and they dropped out halfway through.
Yeah. And an avoider just wants peace all the time. They don't want disharmony in any way. And so if there's any sense of that in their world, they'll just turn in the opposite direction.
Yeah,
And
don't want to
that's,
look at that.
that's whether it's to do with their inner world or what's going on in their outer world. They just want to put the blinkers on, blindfold even, and just crack on. So I knew enough about myself to know that was a thing, but I didn't have it words wise in the way that Shirzad has put the words together.
Mm,
And so, yeah, I can be incredibly like easygoing, want peace, world peace. Wouldn't that be marvelous? Never going to happen, because not everyone's a pleaser avoider. It's just not going to happen. So it's that learning how to take that very sensitive, empathetic nature and how to best use it, how to
mm,
best care for myself, but then how to take it out into the outside world as well. Adding
yeah,
being an introvert, adding, and it's just like, woof, there's an awful lot to us
yeah,
that you can't just drill down to one particular modality. You just can't, because each of us will have had our own individual experiences and
yeah.
will or won't be looking for wisdom. Some people just
One thing well, two things that are in my head right now that I found interesting about this modality, let's say, was first of all, like my partner did do the assessment, but I don't think I would have needed him to do it in order to see that he had high pleaser. And I think that's quite a benefit, especially if you're somebody who works with clients but don't want them to have to take the assessment. If you go through even just the free course that we did, you will be able to pick up on things in other people, and then from what you know of the saboteurs and how they operate, be able to tweak how you approach them, how you work with them if they're clients. So I found that really beneficial. It's like I got so much benefit from looking at myself, but also how to recognize these things in other people. And then the other thing was when you likened it to, it fits in well with the havening techniques that you do. Something that's kind of been in my brain recently, and I feel kind of works in the same way, is love languages. So have you not come across love languages? So it's I can't remember the guy's name. A guy in America wrote this book quite some years ago now about the 5 love languages, and it's how we express love and how we recognize love being expressed to us. So there's words of affirmation. So, people saying I love you, or like you're really great at this, or I really appreciate this, or there's physical touch, which might be as simple as holding hands. Gifts, which I think is self-explanatory. Acts of service. So, like, I really like it when somebody makes me a cup of tea. And there's another one. Oh, quality time. So, and I always remember when I learnt this, I just had this picture of my partner when I lived in London, Dan. He used to always say, I love you. I was like, yeah, I know. But I very rarely said it back because that wasn't my love language. So I will do stuff for people and make them dinner and all of that kind of stuff. That's how I recognize love, for want of a better word. Care, appreciation, whatever you want to use instead. And he didn't recognize that from me. And when he said I love you all the time, obviously I recognized the words and the intention, but that didn't feel like I didn't need that. So it's how this has kind of connected in my head with positive intelligence. It's like recognizing what other people require through, as a pleaser, how is that going to present itself, and how do I react, might not be the best word, to that in them. Because with Rich and his pleaser, I have had to learn how to talk to that part of him instead of just getting annoyed at him that he's annoyed that other people have not appreciated all the stuff that he's done, or that he is doing XYZ for everybody in his life. I have had to learn how to approach that part of him. Um, so yeah, that those two modalities I think kind of work in a similar sort of way. Again, it's one of those personality test type things.
Yeah, no, I haven't come across that. I've made a note of that. I will look into that. It's an interesting thing. I would like my husband to be more of the service person. I'd love to have him make a meal or even a drink or even offer to. It never happens, it never has. But he will tell me he loves me, but I don't appreciate that because
Mm,
me, that's just words. So
yeah.
it's very interesting. I'm going to get that. I'm going to find out more about that and read about that and how again, it's a bit like with, like you say, with positive intelligence, understanding how these saboteurs, A, are created and B, how they play out in our lives. But I've not come across that love language thing, so it'll be an interesting one. Yeah, I will
Mm.
look into that. I learn something every time we do one of these. Um, just to mention again, there is the opposite to the judge and the saboteurs, and that's the sage. And I can't remember all of the qualities of the sage. I don't know if you can. I can remember innovate and navigate, and I can't remember the others. There's
Activate.
what? Sorry,
Activate, that's one.
activate.
I know there's five, isn't there?
Yeah,
Maybe you'll have to join his newsletter to find out.
yeah. Maybe I can't remember. Maybe we do another one and we talk about the sage brain in another
Yeah,
podcast. I think that might be worth doing.
yeah.
Because I do honestly spend a lot of time listening out for the saboteurs, and I am with any client, I know that I am using the sage brain qualities. I just haven't got Shirzad's words for them running on a loop in my head. I have
Mm.
my own. And
And
again, they're
isn't
very similar to what other modalities use.
yeah, and isn't that just, the human brain? We focus on the negative stuff, the
Yeah,
saboteurs, and we cannot name the qualities of the sage.
yeah. Different parts of the brain are having to come into play, and the survival brain is way faster than the sage brain, way faster,
Mm,
because we have to survive. Simples. But yeah, you have to work at the positive and the sage brain and the wisdom. But it is there. Everybody's
mm,
got it. It is there. But you do have to put time and effort into growing that and having your own language that soothes the saboteur side of everything and lifts up the positive sage wisdom side of everything.
mm. And it's like, growing any muscle, isn't it? You have to work it in order to be able to call upon it in an instant. So,
Yeah.
as you can see, dear listener, we could talk about this forever because we love this stuff. But let's leave that there for now. As you said, Denise, we can come back and talk about the sage brain some more. Um, so, the question, Denise, are we done?
I think we should be done. Yes, otherwise this will roll on and on and on. And there's lots of other things we could also be talking about.
Yes. So thank you for listening. As ever, if you want to contribute to the conversation, there is a comment section below. We will read, respond as required. We love to hear from you. Denise, any more words from you before we sign off?
Thank you for listening. And we invite you to listen again with us.
Yes. We will be back with you in a couple of weeks. Until then, bye bye.
Bye bye, everyone. Bye.